So a referendum is needed to change the Australian Constitution. And what that means is bring the nation together in a vote.
I don't know much about the Constitution. I didn't know a lot about the Constitution when I was growing up, but I've come to understand how it works. And the Constitution does not belong to a political party. It belongs to the Australian people, and only we can change it. But it's hard to change because it needs a majority of Australians to vote yes in a majority of states. It's one of the hardest constitutions to change in the world. And to change it, you need to have a referendum where the whole country votes.
A successful referendum is when we get the majority of Australians in the majority of states saying yes.
So it's a difficult thing to achieve success in. There's been very few successful referendums.
And it's really important for that to be embedded in our constitution because we're taking the politics out of the day-to-day. We're putting this in a place that most Australians understand. Most Australians want this not to be a political football. They want to see change. And having that security of being put in the constitution is around how do we actually get on with the job of making things better.
But the most overwhelmingly successful referendum was when Australians voted to allow the government to make laws about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. That was in 1967. And I think we can have the same success again.
Most recently in some of those cases in the High Court, they've said, the judges themselves have pointed to the Uluru Statement from the heart, and they've said if this is what the Australian people want, this is the political will of the Australian people, and it should be put to them and they should have that decision.
This is really a matter for the Australian people. It's not for politicians. The Constitution is voted on and can only be changed by the Australian people. So what we're asking is that at a referendum, will you support our request for a voice to give advice to Parliament when laws are made about us? It's pretty simple. Will you support us to have a view about the things that matter to us in Australia?
I feel good about a referendum. There's a lot of naysayers out there. There's a lot of people that, everyone likes to be an expert, especially in the legal space. Lawyers like to talk about hypotheticals, and it's annoyingly endless. And they come up to you and they say, oh, what about the, so-and-so referendum from the 40s that only... And, the reality is we haven't had a successful referendum since the 70s. We haven't had a referendum since the 90s. It's all old data. It's a completely different... our culture's changed, our demographics have changed, social media, there's so many differences now. And the very simple thing I feel about a referendum is it's time, it's ready, we're there.
The Uluru Statement was a great invitation from First Australians to the rest of Australia to join us as we think about who we want to be as a nation, how we want to redefine our relationship, which has been tested, and how do we move forward together. It really is just a beautiful set of words, a really genuine reach out to the broader Australian community about how we resolve our issues and how we move forward together.
And it's in that spirit that I've seen Australians pick up the invitation and accept the invitation of the Uluru Statement and really run with it. And it's how we get to a point now that we've got a Prime Minister of this country endorsing it emphatically as the way forward for our nation.
So it's important. And the whole reason why we're doing this piece is to get out there and share the information across with as many people as we possibly can, because we know that over time, information and awareness leads to people getting on board. One of the great privileges that I have in the role that I do, involved in this work to try and achieve a successful referendum, is that I get to talk to thousands of Australians across the country. And the really interesting thing that I'm starting to see is people seeing the possibility of what it means when we get this right. When we finally and formally recognise Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples in the Constitution through a voice to Parliament, we are saying something about who we are as a nation. We are saying something about the Indigenous heritage of this country. And the thing that excites me is that people are starting to see the potential to connect their story of what it means to be genuinely and uniquely Australian to the Indigenous story of this land. That if we are to think about what it means to be genuinely, uniquely Australian in a global context that sets us apart from every other country, the one thing that genuinely sets us apart is that we are home to the oldest continuous culture on Earth. This is an opportunity for all of us, where we've all together experienced some really tough times. We've been challenged in our families, in our communities, and across the nation. It's time that we actually did something that brought the country together. This is a moment to genuinely unify the nation. We believe coming together in a referendum on a voice to Parliament is something that can bring the nation together and make history together.